Hello, my name's Amy. I'm an indie author with 8 published books, and this is the last week of NaNoWriMo 2019. You know, I really don't know where November has gone, but somehow we are into the last week. If you've watched my other vlogs, you'll know that I haven't officially been doing NaNoWriMo this year. Instead, I set myself a different writing challenge to edit the book I'm working on. And you know what? As we got into this last week, I considered not vlogging it at all. I've got to be honest, I'm just tired right now. I was talking in my last vlog about how many different things I've worked on in November, and it's become abundantly clear to me that I just have taken on too much recently. I think I've worked on 6 different writing projects since the start of the month, and it's just getting ridiculous. I cannot keep up with it all. And overall, it's making me feel like I'm not really where I want to be on any of those projects. But rather than not vlogging, I've decided I am just going to try and simplify things this week. I've got a much clearer idea of what I want to be working on this week, so I've just got a smaller number of projects to make progress on. First of all, of course, is Cybernation, the main novel I've been editing all month. I finally wrapped up chapter 18 on Saturday night. That chapter almost killed me. It was a monster. And chapter 19 is actually longer, but I'm hoping it won't give me as much trouble. There were just an awful lot of details in the dialogue in chapter 18, and I didn't feel like the first draft got them all across properly. So I literally spent hours just tweaking those details to make sure they were accurate. I think I've got that all sorted now. I'm relatively happy with it. So it'll be on to chapter 19 this week. I've known for a while that I wasn't going to finish the edit this month. To be honest, I always knew it was ambitious. I've still got 11 chapters left to go and 6 days, so that's not going to happen. I have put myself into a fairly good position with this book though. So it's looking like I should be able to finish it in December. I do want to spend this last week of November really pushing to make as much progress as possible though, to make December less stressful. I definitely want this book done by the end of the year. So the more work I can do now, the easier that will be. Sadly, that does mean I won't be releasing it in December, which I'd kind of been hoping to do. I think it's now going to get a January release. But this is just one of those books that has taken its own sweet time. And I've always known there wasn't a lot I could do to hurry that along. As I've said before, it's really painstaking work. This book just needed an awful lot of details sorting out. But you know, 11 chapters left to go. I feel like I'm getting into the home straight now. The other big project I've been working on is The Oracle's Bones. Now, I finished the read-through and notes of that this morning. As I've said before, I have a few chapters left to write, and I think I'm going to start on those this week. I don't expect to make massive progress, and I really don't think I'll finish the draft this week, but I think there's something like 2 or 3 chapters left to write, so if I could get maybe one of those done, that would be great. And apart from that, I am putting every single other writing project on hold. All those fantasy novels, the series and the standalones and the urban fantasy, I'm not working on them this week. Or I say that now, we'll see if I change my mind. I'm fairly committed to The Oracle's Bones though and working on that, so it doesn't really leave much room for anything else. The only other thing I'm going to be doing this week is some beta reading for a friend, and I also have my Chronicles of Tyria chapter due this week, and I have D&D at the weekend. Okay, so it's busier than I thought. But I am hoping just reducing the number of projects I try to work on will make things a bit easier. November has been a big push for me. As I said, I'm feeling pretty tired and drained right now. I don't regret that because I've made really good progress and it has very much felt like I've been taking part in NaNoWriMo even though I haven't been drafting. I'm also hoping that because I've pushed so hard this month, I will be able to take a little bit of a break in December, or certainly slow things down a bit. It is Tuesday afternoon. I had to think about that. Yesterday's writing did not go to plan. I had some time in the afternoon to write and I absolutely intended to work on Cybernation and I didn't. So I mentioned yesterday that I'd finished reading through the Oracle's Bones. Once I'd done that though, the story was very much in my head. So yesterday's writing work all turned into working on that. I made some plans for the last couple of chapters. Well, I looked over the outline I already had and decided it needed tweaking. So I brainstormed that a bit more and worked out how the last couple of chapters are going to go. I also did quite a bit of world building work and working out what's going to happen in the next two books. I inadvertently set up a huge amount of ongoing plot in the first book of this series. The Oracle's Bones was supposed to be, well, not a standalone, but certainly quite self-contained. My original plan was that every book in this series could be read in any order, and it just would have a continuing cast. That is not what has happened though. The plot has just grown completely out of hand. It is absolutely huge now. It's actually galaxy spanning. But I don't want to change that because I really like the plot I have got. This is one of the reasons I spent so long working on it yesterday. Because when I'd finished reading through the first draft, I was really keen to keep working on it. The story did not take the direction I thought it was going to, but I really like the direction it went in instead. I think it's a much stronger book. And yes, I have given myself far more work writing it this way, because each book has to really follow on the major plot points of the one before, but I think the series as a whole will be stronger for it. Today though, I am pleased to report that I did get back to Cybernation. I spent about 40 minutes on it and I'm now halfway through chapter 19. I keep wondering whether this book is going to be finished by the end of the year. I very much want it to be, but progress is very, very slow right now. I've reached a point where there's some really long and detailed chapters. Plot-wise, they're not too bad, but it takes me a long time to get through some of them. So I'm really not ticking off each finished chapter as quickly as I would like. Looking at the amount of progress I've made through November is really putting finishing this edit at more like halfway through January. I think I'm going to make one final push this week to try and speed things up a bit. If I could just get a couple of extra chapters done this week, that probably knocks off an entire week of the schedule. I might actually make a video at some point talking about how it feels to really not be making the progress you want to be making and having to come to terms with that and just be happy with it. That is something that I've really struggled to learn this year. But the book is going okay. I'm now 2/3 of the way through. I like the story. I've already covered some of the bigger plot elements that needed tweaking or fixing, so really there's not a lot of heavy lifting to do to finish this book. Fingers crossed anyway. Well, it is the end of NaNoWriMo. Technically today is actually the 1st of December, but my filming schedule over this last week was a bit scrappy, so I didn't just want to leave the vlog with no more updates. And actually I do just want to wrap everything up. I've just been looking at the list in my bullet journal of everything I've worked on over the last week, and it is all over the place. I spent about 2.5 hours on Cybernation. I wrote my Chronicles of Tyria chapter, which was about 2,200 words. I wrote about 1,000 words of the Oracle's Bones. I did some beta reading for a friend. And I even worked on a thriller idea that I keep coming back to. To be honest, this last week was a bit of a mess. I just worked on too many things. And that actually has been the message from the entirety of November for me. I always have a lot of projects on the go. As well as all those fiction things, there's often things like social media, blogging, and also these videos. So I do naturally juggle a lot of things, but I feel like over the last few months that has really come to a head. Now I am happy with the progress I've made with Cybernation this month. I've worked through about 10 chapters. I did actually finish one this morning, and I've got another 10 to go, so I'm expecting to be done by the end of December. In some ways, I'm not sure I ever could have done more than that. I put really every possible spare minute into cybernation. This is the time when my daughter is asleep, usually during the day, because at night I struggle with concentration for editing. But the problem is I don't feel like I've made a lot of progress on other projects. I worked on all those things I've just mentioned. I also worked on the epic fantasy Winterlands. I was doing that at the start of the month. I've also worked on an urban fantasy and a different epic fantasy. I've done little bits and pieces of all of these, and to be honest, none of them amounted to more than about 5,000 or 6,000 words. It is fun to jump around between things like that, but in the long term, when I am trying to publish books, it just does not work. The trouble is, I'm really struggling to come up with an answer for this. I work relatively slowly. I'm not a massively fast writer, and I'm even slower at editing. But I have so many ideas and I just want to work on them all. So obviously what I've been trying is to have one major project and then jump around between all these other things in the background. In the past I've thought that's worked okay, but honestly this month it wasn't a massive success. But then if I do simplify things down to 2 main projects, then I'm left wondering what to do with all the other ideas that come into my head. All those half-finished or just started stories, all the vlogging and the website stuff and the social media. I'm trying to fit an awful lot in. And there's other things I should be doing, like marketing for my existing books and working out. These are things that have really fallen by the wayside recently. I don't really have an answer for this, but I am left feeling that I do need to simplify things. I think probably what I need to do is just cut it down to say 2 projects a week. That's probably 1 editing project and 1 writing project. I think I need to be wrapping up stories faster and getting them out of the way so that I can move on to something else. This process of jumping around between loads of different stories is just slowing me down too much, and that's not helping anything. And I also think sometimes I need to take a step back and really think about what I want out of my writing career. Some of these things I've worked on, like thriller ideas, for example, and sometimes I work on romances that don't get very far. And there's also the blogging and sort of nature writing, which I always want to get back into and never quite do. All of these things are a lot of fun, but I don't know if they add much to my career as a whole. My true passion is very much writing fantasy and science fiction, and I need to focus on that more. Even just writing those 2 genres is too messy for some writers. They have to focus on one or the other. And because I'm writing more than 1 genre, even if they often have crossover fans, and also because I'm not publishing a book every month or 2 like some indie authors are, I know I'm at a bit of a disadvantage in the indie publishing world. The only way I can really see to get around that is to be disciplined, to put things like the thrillers completely aside, and also to just keep going slowly and steadily. I do already have 8 books out there. I'm pretty good at getting things finished and published now, but I could speed things up if I stopped faffing around with other stories that are never going to see the light of day. I would be better putting that creativity into something completely relaxing that no one else is going to see, like photography or something like that, which I also really love. So that is what my December is looking like. Simplifying. That is what I have really learned from this November and my sort of NaNoWriMo challenge. I'm hoping to keep vlogging and see how this goes, because my writing process is continually shifting, and talking through it on these videos really helps me as much as it helps the people watching, like you. But if you are watching, I hope your NaNoWriMo went well. I think most people were just taking part in the standard NaNoWriMo, so I hope you managed to get your 50,000 words. Even if you didn't, anything you have written is words you didn't have before, and that is always worthwhile. So please comment down below and tell me how it went for you. And please tell me what you're working on in December too. Are you completely burnt out from NaNoWriMo and taking a well-deserved break, or have you still got more to do? I, of course, am always in that second category. Keep writing, everyone, and I'll see you next time.